Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on tonight's episode, I want to talk a little bit about prioritization.
Okay.
I think this is important from a leadership standpoint because there's this idea that in order to be a people pleaser, or in order to make sure that you're giving your people what they need, or your coworkers or your peers, or that you're just trying to be the person who is looked at as a go-to person, that you have to say yes to everything. And I heard recently something that I think I probably knew deep down, but that it kind of helped to hear it out loud. And that's that it's impossible to say yes to everything, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Even if you're not vocalizing it, you're saying it because it's all about prioritization. You have a finite amount of time and a finite amount of resources and money or people or whatever the resource is, and you can't do everything you want to do. You got to pick. And so what I want to know is, do you find yourself having to prioritize things in your leadership life? And is it hard sometimes to have to say no to somebody when you don't really want to?
Absolutely. I think prioritization, is really key to a lot of things from a leadership standpoint. I know we've talked about it before, where it's kind of do the job that only you can do, which is really just kind of code for know what you're actually responsible for, know what are the things that as a leader you are directly, accountable to, and you're the one who has to make the decision or has to be involved. And it's definitely really difficult because, especially when you say that you are a servant leader or work in service of your people and you want to support people, that means a lot of times that people want your time and energy. And as you just mentioned, when you say yes to one person, you're saying no to somebody else or a group of other people potentially. I see it a lot with leaders where, they spend the time with an individual, especially I think when you're a leader of leaders, you have to be really, really, really conscious of this for 2 reasons. Number one, if you're dealing with somebody who technically reports to somebody else, or maybe is an individual contributor, and there's layers of leaders between you, it's really not your direct responsibility to at least be their, level 1 of conversation or time needed or development and that type of thing. Of course, as a leader of leaders, and this is a larger team, you have some elements of responsibility there, but there has to be a process of making sure that the person knows that they can go to multiple people, and you as their leader's leader are kind of not necessarily last resort, but there are options in front of them. I think secondly, though, when you become that kind of leader where you are constantly, to a degree, working around your leaders, you're really devaluing and moving loyalty away from them, because then you have a lot of employees that want to go to you directly instead of their direct leaders. So I think that's just something that when you started talking about this, that I immediately thought of, where I'm really conscious about if I say yes and if I say no, because those things can have a much larger impact and effect if I, as a leader of leaders, spending my time in the wrong places.
Yeah, I like that. I like the first thing you said about doing the job only you can do, because it really made me think of something that I'm kind of dealing with right now with one of my clients. There are a couple of people at one of the clients that work for me that seem to be constantly applying for any open job. And I don't mean ones that are, not up their alley or why would you even think you could do this? I mean, actual positions that open up that would move them around the organization or change things. And if you have never met some of these people before and you just hear them talk about why they're passionate about whatever this new job or new role is, you would think, oh, wow, this is kind of like this person's calling. They really need to get into this role. And then when they don't get it, you move on and you go about your day. And then a few months will go by and another spot will open up somewhere else. And they seem to be just as passionate about it, but it has nothing to do with the first one. And so there's these people that I've kind of gotten to know that I've started to realize that they're just restless where they are. They don't actually have a passion for whatever this new thing is. They just are kind of done with what they're doing. And I found myself thinking that if they spent half the time on doing their actual job well, that they spend on trying to make people aware that they want this new thing or want to be a part of this new thing, they would have already excelled at their current role and been able to move up or get promoted or take on more responsibility. And so what they're doing is they're kind of prioritizing this kind of shiny object, that has no real long-term payoff. It's just kind of a distraction. And what they're sacrificing is the stuff that actually matters. So I see this all the time.
Yeah, they're saying yes to every single opportunity they see, and they're saying no to actually spending time getting better at their job.
Right, exactly.
Right, yeah,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's so true, and I like the idea where it like I don't think like I wasn't thinking about it that way until you kind of brought it up in this episode of like, no, in fact, that every time you say yes, you are also saying no.
Yeah.
Like every single time. And I think, as a leader, I think another place where it can get tempting and where it's a difficult decision is, things like meetings and get-togethers and, when you have teams that are coming together and they would like you to be at the meeting and you would also like to be at the meeting to kind of stay close to what's going on. But, if you
There's a little bit of FOMO in that too.
Oh, absolutely there is, right? And it's also like if you say yes to every one of them, though, then, what are you saying no to? And sometimes, there's value always, in my opinion, of having great dialogue in these situations, in these meetings. But I also think that there's great value in allowing your teams to have those meetings without you, and then following up to see how they went. And, what do the notes look like if people have taken notes? And if you talk to multiple people that were in the same room, did they all have the same takeaway? Is there clarity? Is there consistency? Those things are also helpful when you're trying to help develop other leaders, and when you're looking to see, well, like who led the meeting, and did everybody come out of that meeting on exactly the same page, or did everybody come out of that meeting, with the same takeaways, the same commitments, or does everybody have a different view of what happened in the meeting? And that can be an opportunity for you as a leader to then spend the time with other leaders to help them sharpen those skills or provide them with that kind of feedback. So I think it's I find myself saying yes to the ones where I feel like there's an opportunity for something like vision, or I feel like maybe the team is not yet in a space where they're going to have a lot of productive time together. They kind of need that kickoff of, why don't you go ahead and do this, or let's have this dialogue before you get going. I definitely do my best to try to attend those. But for a lot of the other ones, I say no. I said, hey, do you need me there? Is kind of what I'll say. Like, well, no, it'd be great to have you though. Well, if you don't need me, then go ahead and go and let me know how it goes and go from there. I think the other thing is, it can be difficult. It just depends on where you are with building your team. Saying yes to individual conversations is, in my opinion, is really important if you are a leader of leaders. But it has to be with those leaders. You should be saying yes to 90% of the time with those people that report directly to you that then have influence over others. If you're saying yes too much to people that are reporting to those people or are not involved in that kind of direct organization, it's kind of like you're investing in a lot of spaces where you don't have as much influence on the potential result or the alignment of the team as you can if you make the right decision.
And it's out of scope too. I mean, at the end of the day, if you keep allowing yourself to be the workaround that allows an employee and a leader that report to you to not have the kind of relationship with each other that they need because you're the crutch, it's never going to solve itself. Whatever the issue is that is leading that employee to feel like they can't go directly to their direct leader first, hopefully they can articulate that to you. But if they can't, then that's the kind of thing where you kind of have to pry, I think, a little bit and say, I'm here for you. Have you tried this first? And if the answer is yes or no, or whatever it is, that can kind of help guide you too. The thing that I like you brought up is when you're talking about vision and when you decide to be a part of things. And I like that a lot, because I think a good litmus test for a lot of this is whether or not that thing aligns with the mission, vision, and values of your organization, or of your personal mission, vision, and values. So if you've been asked to say, if you've been asked to say yes to something, and you're trying to decide what items will end up being said no to by you saying yes to this, the first thing to do is look at, does this item or some of those other items, do any of them align with the mission, vision, and values of myself and my organization? And if the answer is yes, it becomes a lot easier conversation to have with yourself. It can be a very great way to articulate why you chose to prioritize one thing over another, if you can ground it in that you were staying true to your own mission, vision, and values. But when those things don't happen, a lot of times the criteria becomes subjective, and you have to be able to stand behind that to your people. If you have two people that are both asking for help on something and you can only be at one place at one time, how do you articulate the decision to choose one over the other? You better be able to do that, because if it's just kind of flipping a coin, you're going to lose some relationships with the people who seem to get the short end.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, and it's not as easy as kind of a black and white option here. There's a lot of, I think, of layers of complexity in this, and relationships, and where are you at on your journey? Where are you a new leader? Are you a 10-year leader with the team? Where are they at in regards to the work that they're doing? I think another thing as well that it can be very tempting for leaders is kind of the idea of taking on extra work. There's many times when I'm either on in meetings, on conference calls, and maybe the boss or the boss's boss or somebody is like, hey, who would like to take lead on this project? Hey, who wants to own this? Who wants to do that? And many times leaders with high amounts of career ambition will be the first ones to raise their hand. And they want the attention, they want the responsibility, they want to say they've done this work. And when they say yes to those things, similar to the person that applies for all the jobs that are open, then you are also saying no to spending the quality time maybe within your own business and within your own team. And so it's being really tactical and smart around which one of those responsibilities you want to sign up for and take on. Look, many times you're voluntold. You don't have a choice in the matter here, and you just got to go do this extra work. But being smart enough to kind of think about how you prioritize, what time do you have, what can you invest. Those things are something that you really want to think about when making these decisions, because what you can find yourself doing is getting caught up in overworked and overstressed with all of this extra work, while your team, your results, what you're responsible for is not at the level that it should be. And then you find yourself in a really big problem because your actual job is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that's probably going to pull down on the extra credit job that you're trying to get done as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think another thing that you have to think about too is your personal life. And so, we talk about prioritization, and we talk about, if you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And I can see a lot of leaders listening, with the wheels turning, thinking, well, I can say yes to both. It just means that I'm, working 50 hours this week instead of 40, or 60 instead of 50, or whatever that number is. Well, then that means you're saying no. You're still saying no to something else. Either you're saying no to your spouse or your kids if you have them, or to a hobby, or that book you've been looking forward to, or catching up on Game of Thrones, or whatever it is that you would be doing during that time is what you're saying no to. So this isn't a compartmentalized thing where you can just keep work separate. Your entire life has a finite amount of resources, be it time or talent or treasure, whatever it is you have. And when you say yes to something at work, I know a lot of leaders who say yes to everything at work, and they typically get it done. They have terrible home lives. They don't have friends, they don't have hobbies, they don't have relationships. They just kind of invest everything into work. And if they're happy, go right ahead and do it. But if you find yourself being upset that you've said no to something in your personal life because you keep saying yes to things at work, really look at why you're choosing to prioritize these things. If it's short term and there's a huge potential upside for your career, whatever it is, great, go ahead. But if there's no end in sight, if you just keep saying yes because you feel like that's what you have to do and you can't really articulate the why behind it, really revisit those things, because I'm sure a lot of things you're saying yes to are things that you don't really have to say yes to.
Yes, I agree. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack.
The 1 minute hack.
Okay, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. I want you to have your notebook and your pen ready with you when you're walking around, when you're talking to your employees, when you're kind of conversing with people that you work with, peers, direct reports, etc. And I want you to write down the questions and the favors and the asks that you get asked to do, that you get asked to say yes to on a daily basis. And you can answer the question that you get asked, yes or no, whatever you feel comfortable doing, but then take the time to write it down and study that question and think about the things that you said no to without actually saying no. Write those things down. You said yes to this person without thinking about it, or maybe with thinking about it because you wanted to make them happy. You're a people pleaser. You wanted to get the job done. Think about and write down what you said no to. Did you say no to another employee that you were supposed to help out? Did you say no to being able to go home at 6 o'clock that night instead of at 8 o'clock that night? What did you actually say no to? Get in the habit of doing this every time you say yes, and you will train your brain to start having these conversations in an instant when you get asked the questions. The ideal is that when somebody comes and approaches you, you know what you're saying no to right away when they ask you to say yes to something. You'll find yourself being able to prioritize much, much better and getting done the work that actually matters.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and it seems, tedious, and well, who has time for that, right? But I think that the idea here is to really understand, self-reflect, and realize, what types of decisions are you making on a day-to-day basis, an hourly basis, that can be leading to a lack of productivity and or the fact that you might be missing things or dropping the ball and stuff like that. It's a great practice to be a lot more self-aware about exactly how and where you spend your time and what are the things that pull you away from what you should be doing.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and if you find yourself being spread thin and you find yourself feeling like you're saying yes to everything, you're doing your best, but you're just juggling too many balls here, then this is for you. And it's really worth the investment to do this.
Yep. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.